What's up, design family, and welcome back to another episode of Fittdesign TV. So glad to have you back on the channel. On today's episode, we'll be looking at real and fake furs, or otherwise known as faux furs, where faux is the word for fake in French. So when I refer to faux, that's exactly what I mean. On today's episode, we'll be looking at a bunch of things. Essentially, we'll be looking at the common materials used to make most of the faux furs that we see on the market. We'll be looking at some of the production techniques used to make these fake furs. We'll look at the advantages and disadvantages of buying faux fur. And lastly, I'll give you guys my tips and tricks in terms of how to instantly tell the difference between faux fur and real fur. That way, the next time you're out and you're looking at a product and it's advertised as real fur, you know that you're getting the right deal and you know that you're not being bamboozled or swindled. Ultimately, there are a lot of unscrupulous people out there, so this episode is going to be a crash course in everything you wanted to know about faux fur and whether or not it's going to be the right choice for you as a material or as an item in your wardrobe. What's up, design family, and welcome to Fittdesign TV. So glad to have you here. On this channel, we discuss all things sports fashion, graphic design, manufacturing, and technology. We'll discuss key topics, answer pressing questions, and provide actionable steps on starting your own product line. If you're interested in any of the above topics, stick around. You're in for a good one. Faux fur is otherwise known as pile fabric. Essentially, faux fur is designed to resemble the appearance of animal fur, hence the name. It's actually usually made from acrylic polymers and are typically processed, dyed, cut to create these specific fiber textures that we see out of authentic animal fur. And we do this by weaving, tufting, circular knitting, or actually knitting the fibers into fabric. And that's essentially how we create this fur element and how we tie it down to fabric that can then be used into a finished garment or product. And now that we actually understand what faux fur is, let's look at some of the common materials used to create both the fur fibers themselves, so actually the strands that we see that we actually associate with faux fur, and then the backing, so where these fibers are attached. When it comes to the fur fibers themselves, usually you're going to see acrylic, and we've done a separate video on acrylic in the past that I highly recommend you check out. Mode acrylic, silk, wool, and mohair. Those are great fibers to use, and each one is going to have its own pros and cons depending on the cost, depending on the hand feel, and the long-term durability. Looking at the fur backing, so where these fibers are actually attached, cotton, wool, and polypropylene are great options to use, and typically what you see in the market. Next up, let's actually look at some of the different production techniques used to create faux fur. The first one we have is called weaving. This one involves actually looping the fibers through the backing fabric and then interlacing these two parts together. This one, or this technique, can actually produce a wide range of faux fur fabrics and is extremely popular when it comes to the faux fur fabrics that we see in the general market. Next up on our list, we have what is known as tufting. This one is a similar method to weaving, but can actually be processed at a higher speed. So it's a bit more economical and more efficient in this sense, but it does require specialized machinery, so do bear that in mind. Last up, when it comes to the production techniques, we have circular, looping, and knitting. This one uses the same technique as plain knitting when it comes to producing faux furs, but it's actually more economical and produces furs at a faster rate. But it does, again, require specialized machinery, so definitely do bear that in mind. Well, let's actually look at why you may be interested in faux fur. There are a ton of different advantages and disadvantages, and I'll be covering them in this segment. When it comes to the advantages, we'll start off with the most obvious. When it comes to faux fur, you have a lower production cost, and faux fur is much more affordable than actual animal fur. 2, using faux fur is traditionally considered as more ethical, obviously because you're eliminating the actual killing of an animal to source that fur. Also, faux furs can actually be made to be antimicrobial and are typically seen as more durable than natural furs. And lastly, when it comes to the handling of faux furs, they are easier to handle when it comes to the production process, and they require much less maintenance than real furs. When it comes to the disadvantages, unfortunately, the creation process of faux furs is environmentally unfriendly. Also, the materials that we typically see used to create both the fur parts and the backing parts of faux furs are also non-biodegradable, so that also adds to the lack of environmental friendliness of this technique. Also, the performance aspect of faux furs is known to be much less than that of actual furs. They're less insulating and less breathable than real furs. Now to round out this episode, what are the ways to actually distinguish between real fur and faux fur? There are 4 key categories that you actually need to look at, and this makes it instantly distinguishable between the fact that you're getting real fur or you're getting something that is of the faux fur variant. First one is going to be the burn test. Second, we're going to look at the construction. Then we'll evaluate the tips of the fibers, so getting up close and personal with them. And lastly, we'll conduct what is known as a pin test. First, let's look at the burn test. This involves just taking a simple flame and running it through the furs. When it comes to an animal fur, it's going to react the way you expect. You're going to singe and burn the hair, and you're going to have this burnt hair smell that we're pretty much all familiar with, especially if you've ever used a dryer or a straightener on your hair. This is something you'll be familiar with. Faux fur, on the other hand, is going to melt and smell like burnt plastic. Next up, we have the construction. With animal fur, you're going to have something that is skin-based. Again, this is based on an actual real-world animal skin. So when you look at the construction, it's going to look like skin. When it comes to your faux fur, it's going to look fake. It's going to be webbing-based, and it's going to be clearly woven, knitted, or whatever construction technique has actually been used. Next, we have the tips of the fibers. Grab a magnifying glass or a macro lens and look at the tip of the fiber. With faux fur, you'll see something that's clearly machine cut and is extremely united in its appearance. It doesn't look like an actual element that you'd see out in nature. When it comes to animal fur, on the other hand, it looks like natural hair. If you've ever put a hair strand under a microscope, that's exactly what it's going to look like. It's going to have a natural look and it's going to be pointed at its end. Lastly, run a pin through the backing. When it comes to animal fur, because it's skin, it's going to be easy to pass through with no interruptions. When it comes to faux fur, you're going to be dealing with a thicker material and one that has more structural rigidity. So it's going to be much tougher to pass a pin through the backing of faux fur. Essentially, that's the way to tell the difference between both, and it's really not that difficult to tell. So next time you're out, definitely give these techniques a try. 3. Well guys, that's pretty much it. That is a wrap on this episode, guys. Hopefully you've enjoyed it. This has been a quick crash course on everything you've ever wanted to know about faux fur. Again, quickly to recap, we looked at what faux fur is, some of the common construction techniques, we looked at the different parts of faux fur, the common materials, and then I gave you guys my tips and tricks in terms of how to distinguish between real fur and faux fur. Guys, if you enjoyed this episode and want to see others like it, we've done an episode in the past on how to instantly tell the difference between real and fake leathers, and I highly recommend you check it out. Also, if you want to see other content on all things sportswear design, graphic design, manufacturing, and logistics, check out our channel. Guys, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Fittdesign TV. Until next one, stay awesome.